Hello everybody, May here, and welcome to this assembly video and a showcase of the MechWild MurphPad, which I use for MMO gaming, strictly for Final Fantasy XIV. You can see this here. It is quite a big one. It is 5 inches, and I believe 6 wide, 6 inches tall. It is kind of hefty with the current 3D printed case I'm using, but it is a fantastic one for me. It has 26 keys, which fits my needs for all of my hotbars. It also has USB-C connecting. It is comparable with the 1UP keyboard Sweet 16 key MacroPad that I use, which you see right there. I'll go into further in it. And it currently has some really cool keycaps from Royal Keycaps with Final Fantasy XIV, job classes, and more. So we'll go into it just a little bit. So this is going to be a little bit of like a setup of what I did when making it. You can actually construct it yourself. They do have the diodes and the other pieces for soldering and whatnot if you're brave enough to do it. There is an assembly service, which I will get into a little bit more. This is what I used, and there's a whole caption of what pieces I have put together here, and that is the whole setup that I have done together for this MacroPad. Now we're going to get into explaining about it. So this was the 1UP keyboard Sweet 16 MacroPad. Fantastic at the time, very easy to build because it is also hot swappable. You only really need like a screwdriver to put the screws together. It uses, in the back right there, by the way, is a hole to reset the in order to flash the keyboard. It is USB-C friendly as well. The buttons are really nice. I use Sakura's key switches, and there are layered acrylic pieces there. As you can see, I had to turn off the light. It was very easy to build, and again, you know, very, very friendly for first-time keyboard or macro board construction. Now, the other thing I lowered the lights for is because it is ungodly bright as well. I really love RGB, so this is RGB Vomit, and I loved it so much. It's so bright. You know, the camera can't discern the colors, but it's really, really nice. You can also change the light settings in QMK Configurer to be for whatever you want. Now, this is what I mostly used for Fantasy XIV. I wasn't able to get all of my attacks in, so this is where the MurphPad comes in for me with all the keys. Now, here for the parts of the MechWild customized MurphPad kit, you have the screws, the standoffs, the encoder knob, and the rubber non-skid bumper thingies there. It also extra costs. This is the 7305 MillMax Sockets, which makes the board hot swappable. And this is the controller board, which I actually had them do the assembly service, which is $35 depending what you want to do, with the diodes and the PCB, which is the Pro Micro USB-C, which is an extra $3 as well. The total cost right there is on the right, which is $97.50, including shipping. And again, this is the USB-C connection. They also soldered the RGB lighting for me as well. There is an encoder here, which is great, and you can literally set up everything here. Those dots I'm pointing to right now is for where you can solder the MillMax socket connectors, or you can just literally solder the sockets there to be a more permanent solution. So for me, I like to change my switches, so I'll do that. And these are the diodes that I actually had them solder for me, which they did very clean. Those are the LED lights that I mentioned before. That's the reset for the flashing of the QMK file. I don't know what those are. I have to look into that. And that is the Pro Micro PCB. And again, those are very smooth jobs that they did with the soldering. Next thing is the keyboard faceplate, which is where you would put on top of the keys, and those two plates would be if you would just want to use the plates for just as is. It goes on top, and they have screws which are included in that bag before we just saw, and it gives a nice clearance between the PCB and the switches right there. And then the back plate, which we'll look at, is very nice quality, and you can get it in black and white. So the assembly service does require, you know, extra because they needed some sort of extra Pro Micro sockets and pins, so I guess it was something that was not included with the Pro Micro version, I guess, because there is a regular version. I can't remember, it's been a while, but totally worth it. And this is the back plate, which has the MechWild logo, which I believe is a German Shepherd. Now, next up are the Royal Keycaps, which is fantastic. They're Etsy based, US based as well, and I got some really cool ones. These are a little expensive again. These are custom. They're also RGB ones, so you can actually see the lighting if you get the translucent switches, which I did not. I'll explain it further. I did get a larger amount of sets for the Final Fantasy job icons. So I got 21 of those. I got some DDR arrows for directional, for WASD, or, you know, up, down, left, right arrows. And then I got 2 Cherry Blossom Sakura keys to help me switch between the layering. So I will make multiple layers for my macro board, so I can switch between my hotbars right there. And those will be where the cherry blossoms will be. The top 4 I just topped up there is mostly for Discord to mute or do other stuff for streaming. The rest of it would be for the game. Now, this is the case from CustomNiches, Florida-based Etsy store, 3D printing, amazing quality, very, very sturdy printed case. They call it the ChonkPad. It is really chonky, but worth it. The seller definitely included a lot of stuff, including screws, standoffs, and a keyboard support plate, which is the white thing that we'll show in a minute. They also work with you for whatever color type that you want for the filament. And I got a pink, a blue, a sky blue, which the camera does not show properly, and then a translucent there. And this is what you're supposed to do when you put the pad or the chipboard into the case. It's very, very nice. And then those are the extra pieces for the case, and then again with the keyboard white keyboard plate support. That one I still have no clue what it is. It's probably like a switch holder or something. Now next are the glorious Lynx switches. These were ones that I had existing at home presently because I was going to switch out my twins GMK Pro 2 keyboard, but they didn't need switching out because they were pretty good, so I kept them. And these are pre-lubed. You can get them at Micro Center. You can get them from your local, or actually from the website for Glorious. They're very good. They're not translucent, so you will not be able to see the RGB lighting from the MacroPad, but they have a nice feel. There's a nice weight. They're linear tactile, I think. I could be wrong. I'm not really great with my switches, but I had previous ones which were Gateron yellows and Sakurios pink ones, and they're pretty good. Almost all the switches I use currently are all silence or linear. So this is where we're going to put the switches, and you can see right there, and where the pins are. And where the pins are, that is where we will be connecting the 7305 MillMax sockets. And then what we'll be doing in terms of that is that we will be doing the switch method of soldering the MillMax sockets, where we'll be putting the sockets on the pins, and then we will be keeping the switches on the board and then soldering it on there. So you'll see again, we're also going to try to make sure not to melt the plastic parts of the switches, so that way I won't be messing up anything. Now, this is just your standard soldering kit. You can find any of them, at your hardware store or Amazon. This one has a temperature control and an on-off switch, and also interchangeable heads. It does come with a couple other things, which includes the stand, which I'll show in a minute. And yeah, here are the heads. So it's preferred that you go with a thinner soldering needle tip with this one. This is the Weller Solder Brass Tip Cleaner with silicone holder using brass sponge. This is the easier way to clean off the solder, the extra metal. And this is the holder stand that came with the kit. So that here is the Keser lead-free solder with a flux core, so I don't need to have liquid flux to make a little bit of a mess. This is the flux that you use, the filament. It's really good. It melts very good. This, I've done one before, and it's very good to use that filament. So now we're going to add the MillMax sockets to the Lynx switches. It is a bit of a pain because it is a lot smaller, in terms of pieces, and if you lose it, you're gonna have to go on your knees, your hands and knees, to look for it with a flashlight. So again, using a tweezer, you can use this with your fingers, but just be careful. And this is how we're gonna do it. Again, having both pins being covered with the MillMax sockets, and then we're gonna attach it to the circuit board. Counting out 25 switches now, and we're going to be putting all the MillMax sockets to them. Now, adding all the MillMax sockets actually didn't take too long. It was about maybe 10 to 15 minutes. And then here we're going to put them on here, which is probably took out maybe about 1 or 2 minutes. I'm going to say 3. Now you want to make sure these are secure because they do have a tendency to fall off because of the unevenness thanks to the encoder height. Putting the last one in, which is the final switch that I'll be using for layer switching on QMK. And what I actually had to do is actually put the keyboard plate underneath the switches and put a rubber hairband on it to keep it from actually falling off, because I had some issues with that before. So now you see me soldering every one, and it was a little unnerving before, but I managed to get a rhythm to do the soldering. Soldering can be a little scary, but once you get used to it, it's actually pretty cool. Just don't burn your hands. And the soldering took about 40 minutes. Now we're going to do the USB test. And everything lights up. And what's really cool about this keyboard is that they have the LED screen, which tells you what you're using. And the LED lights were not programmed yet, so we're going to change that later. Now it's ChonkPad case assembly time. So this one I had a little bit of trouble with because of just me being me. But we have all the pieces together, so we don't really need that white piece after the fact, because again, I didn't realize what it was until after I did some research. Oh, okay. Now we're looking at some instructions, and what we're going to do is that we're going to put that here. This is the translucent part of the case. I'm going to put the faceplate on it, and then we're going to put the chipboard, making sure that it aligns with the USB-C. We're going to put these bracket pieces in between, which acts as a buffer between the faceplate and the actual board. We're going to screw everything in. Then what we're going to do is we're putting the 4 black standoffs also in the corner. And we're using an Allen wrench, because hand screwing this against plastic is not fun. Also, remember, when you're doing anything with plastic filament, especially 3D printed stuff, do not over tighten things, which thankfully I did not. What we're going to be using is that we're going to be using a 5 64 Allen wrench to tighten the black standoffs. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take off the film, which is the most satisfying part of any type of build, which I probably should have done at the end. Right, after doing some looking at the instructions, the next thing we're going to be doing is the blue outside piece, which is the piece de resistance holding the case itself. So that is the initial color. I really like sky blue. Again, this is supposed to be like a very similar color to the Lynx switches, a little bit darker, teal, and it's very, very hefty, gives a nice weight, very secure case. Next thing to do is to do the pink side, which we're going to put also the non-skid circles on there. And I really like how they did it with the design here, where they actually gave some indentations for the non-skids. Next up again, we're putting the 4 standoff screws that we need to use the Allen wrench to tighten up. And these hold up the translucent and the blue 3D printed covers. Next up, we're pretty much done with that. It is secure, so what we're going to do is we're going to put together the bottom piece, which also you can see the CustomNiches logo. And these are the 2 pieces here that will keep it sturdy, nice and flat, give it a little bit of a lift, because it is a little bit of an angled pad. And these 2 pieces just slide in. You see how satisfying that is, and you know that they will not move. And we will be using 4 smaller screws provided by CustomNiches to keep that in place. Next up, we're just going to combine both halves together, and it is kind of like a semi-slide in. So the bottom part will slide in to each other, and then it'll just be held up by a screw. I was a little trying to figure it out, and there we go. So I had to push it down, but it looks fairly clean. The USB slot looks fairly has good clearance. Just need to put a screw on it. I was kind of surprised that it fit because the hole was a little wonky, like it was very rectangle, but it definitely works. All right, there we go. So our completed pad assembly for the ChonkPad case. Now we're just going to put the encoder knob provided by MechWild. And we're going to be doing an assembly of all of these together. First up are the directional arrows, then the cherry blossom ones, and then the rest of the Final Fantasy classes. I didn't get all of them because, again, they're not all going to fit on the keyboard, but I chose the ones that I really liked. And it doesn't mean I got all the classes. I only have 4 classes currently, but I will do it later. There we go. So pressing it, really nice looking pad, and we're doing a num test, and it was so satisfying to see all the buttons work and to see all of that green come up. Again, only the number pad portion, which is the 20 key section, worked because I haven't programmed the other 2. It's very satisfying. And then next up here is the QMK Configurer, which you have to save the file, which is a little bit more complicated, so that you follow the instructions of the keyboard or the MacroPad that you purchased from the company. These are basically the keybinds I have for the HUD layout that I have for my hotbar on Final Fantasy XIV. And because you can have multiple hotbars, you can switch through them. So this is my first layer. This is the second layer for the second hotbar. Again, different key combinations you can do. And of course, there's some standard buttons. This is layer 3. Again, it's a combination of macros. And then the other layers, again, with these arrow keys and some of the run dash is going to be the same for all of them. And then this is just the LED lighting configurer. We're going to next go to Final Fantasy XIV to test it out. And we're going to go to Shirogane, which is where my FC house is. I don't own the FC house. I just belong there. one day. So as you can see here, I'm going to test it out. The directionals are still good. I have my select and tab. So I'm right now doing the self tab select and then doing a tab to select a different object. And those tabs and the dash and the arrows will be set as static ones. Now the next ones to switch out, you'll see that I'll be targeting the striking dummy, and we're going to test out some of these actions with the Sage class I currently have here. And I like Sage a lot right now. That's what I'm currently using for MSQ. I already 90'd completely Scholar and Summoner. Let me just actually, before we do that, I'm going to space out my bar now. And we're going to start off with the first hotbar, which is to the left next to the chat. You see that's on the very top. So I have a 4x3 layout for the hotbar. Oh, and you see how I just press the Sakura buttons on the left? That's to set the layer, which is the first one. Going through the rounds with Cardia, and then, you know, repos, just hovering over them so that way you can see what they are. Then I'm going to switch it to hotbar 2. As you can see, I have that there. I also have the wide area attack. And some of these names are a little bit hard to pronounce, so I'm not going to even bother butchering them. And there's that shield. Or that buffer, damage buffer. Anyway, next up we're going to the third one. And then because not all the buttons are bound here or given the keybind, most of it should be the same as well. Again, with different classes, it's going to be a little different, but you know, you can see that the standard is going to be the same with the dash and the arrow keys for all of the classes, which basically is just up to you to basically keep it the same. Changed it before to my Summoner and then Scholar. And then you see somehow how some of them haven't gone through. It's because it's just not available or the action's not there. And then there is my Reaper class. Again, the same things. The run is still the same. And the directional arrows basically work the same anyway. So yeah, it looks pretty well. And you know, I really like this pad a lot. I'm still getting used to it to stretch my fingers out, but yeah. So guys, I hope you really liked this video. I know it's a bit of a long one for this MacroPad, but I really do like MechWild MurphPad for this game. Highly recommend you look at all the stores that I use because they're really good. And again, small businesses do need our help. So guys, if you like this video, give it a like. If you didn't like this video, give it a dislike. If you want to see more videos like this and other ones, leave me some comments down below. Hit that subscribe button to see more videos. Also, don't forget to follow me on my social medias, my Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram. If you do end up getting this pad, let me know. And I hope to see you in the next video. Bye-bye!